So I have a little essay I wanted to read to you guys, just sort of about what's been going on with me on Twitter. I entitled it "Why Me?" and I just want to sort of hit you guys with a couple questions around what's been going on with my Twitter account and some thoughts. It's about 1,000 words, and there's not really a point to it. I hope that's not a problem, June. Are you ready to hear my full diatribe complaining about why Elon didn't give me $30,000?
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. Alex, is there anything you want to say before I start whining for no reason?
I just want to apologize to the audience.
And in order and to hear my bellicose ramblings, we have brought on esteemed podcaster and the host of There Are No Girls on the Internet, Bridget Todd. How are we doing, Bridget?
I'm doing great. Super excited to hear those ramblings.
Yeah, why don't you get started?
Yeah, I was trying to pull up the thing and do like a parody of cat turds. Very strange tweet.
Oh my God. Can you believe that whole diatribe was about tweets? Like, you would think he worked at a coal mine.
Yeah,
that's my favorite part. It's like if you like didn't know who this guy was and like read the first like two little paragraphs, you'd think like this guy just got back from war or something, or like he just like
was
lost
like
an
elected
arm.
President. No sense of scale on at Cat Turd 2, unfortunately. Philip Buchanan is absolutely off his goddamn rocker.
Dude is such a strange creature. I love him. I love Cat Turd too. Like we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but like there's so many like insane right-wing weirdos online and especially Twitter these days. But there's just something about Cat Turd that like, I don't know, he fascinates me. I could never be mad at him. I'm so fascinated by everything he says.
I think that with what's going on with Cat Turd, like what he said today, is part of the reason that we wanted to talk to Bridget about this topic, because the way people are behaving on Twitter is really, really bizarre and gets so much stranger every day between the pedophiles and the Nazis and the various maniacs. I got like brigaded by a bunch of NFT guys who had some sort of inside joke amongst themselves that made no sense to anybody but them.
I didn't even know those guys were still around, I'll be honest.
I found that's how it started. A guy was like, check out my fucking ape. This is a genuine BAYC. And I'm like, are you serious right now? You're still doing this? And then a bunch of them are like, oh my God, Whack doesn't know. He doesn't get it. I was like, I don't get what? And then the original guy starts retweeting me. He's got like 150,000 followers. And so there's a bunch of weirdos being like, oh, this guy doesn't get it. I'm like, what do you guys are the weird ones, not me. I'm not the one. But yeah, so Bridget, we wanted to sort of talk about what you've seen, what you noticed, what your thoughts are around Elon's Twitter in July 2023.
Not good is what I would say in one phrase. Two thumbs down. Yeah, I mean, I've been on Twitter since almost the very beginning. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that Twitter was all a bed of roses before Elon Musk. It definitely had its problems. But the difference between the pre-Musk days and the post-Musk days is very stark and very clear. Like, I got called a racial slur the other week, and I haven't been called a racial slur. It almost was sort of like, oh, this is a throwback. Like, I thought they got rid of these. Like, so I definitely think it is a palpable change. I would say probably the biggest change for me isn't the rise in like slurs and hate speech and bots and scams. I would say that it's like the blue check reply guy, the caliber of their replies is such that you can't even argue. Pre-Musk, people would say out-of-pocket stuff, and it would be like, okay, like, I get where they're coming from. I get the framework. I get I don't agree with it. I don't like it. But now they say things that are so stupid that you can't even dunk on it. You're like, I don't even know how to engage.
And also, like, one of the main differences that several people have pointed out before is, like, usually, like, the more, like, wild and, like, hateful and insane stuff was relegated to that show more button below all of the other replies. Now they're just boosted to the top. So,
We're
like,
at the very top.
Yeah, so you have no choice but to see those now.
Yeah, and a lot of those replies, the ones that are boosted because they have bought Twitter Blue, are just so fucking stupid. Like I saw someone was talking about the SAG strike, and top reply, blue check, was like, I think that what the actors and screenwriters need to do is negotiate. Ever think about that? You're never going to get anywhere if you don't negotiate. And I was like, what do you think they're doing? Like, what do you think this whole process is? Why is this how is this discourse that we're being forced to see and is being boosted? How does this make anybody smarter or like more informed?
It's just real conversation. It's promoting conversation. That's what it's doing.
Yeah.
We've never had so many good conversations in our life. And half of these conversations just happen to contain slurs now.
Right?
Yeah, they have to contain slurs, and it's really important that if you're making like a joke on Twitter, that like a bunch of guys with blue checks just say the exact same thing underneath it, and then we get to see all the people just restating the exact same joke that's already been made.
Elon Musk said something the other day that was like about George Orwell. Like George Orwell is based or whatever.
He's based.
And I saw a bunch of posts underneath it, which were just people then responding with the names of very famous George Orwell books, being like, Animal Farm. That is the caliber of response we're working with.
They're like seals clapping, like they recognize it.
Like, yeah, I mean, they're stupid. I think is the thing that we've sort of noticed as time has gone on. I think that like with the labor stuff going on in the country right now with the UPS strike, threatening strike, I haven't seen the updates on that, but with SAG and with WGA,
yeah, there's a lot of labor movement stuff going on right now in the country.
Yeah, and it's like those guys, like this is the worst time possible for those guys to have an increased platform because they get to say stuff like, why are these rich actors complaining so much? And then they get kicked to the top.
And like for the stuff like this, those people like kind of always existed. Mm-hmm. Like you'd always kind of see these takes, but now they're getting boosted by the blue check, or like Elon might reply to that and be like, interesting,
concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for certain populations of people, I think a lot of people have left. I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of people have left Twitter because of the sort of frightening levels of toxicity that exist on there now, where like people are so comfortable just being like, I think the Jews secretly invented COVID, and then Ben Shapiro can be like, I don't think that's what Robert F. Kennedy meant when he said that. I think he meant something else, and it's a real mess right now. June, what have you seen? Not as a poster, but as a woman. What have you seen as like a difference in the not just like timeline, but also like your replies and your DMs? I'm very curious. We've never really talked about your DMs.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just start with the DMs because I've always had like my DMs open, and I don't typically get too many insane DMs. Surprisingly, like you'd think I would get like some of the craziest shit in my DMs, but like they're pretty calm. Like I've made a friend through a DM request like that I met in real life like 3 months ago. So like they're pretty normal for the most part. But in terms of just like posting in general, ever since, because I think it's coming close to a year since Elon technically started running Twitter, right? Like it was in November, was it, of 2022? Somewhere like that.
Yeah.
But
late November.
Yeah, late November. And the thing that I've noticed and a lot of other trans people have noticed, which is why a lot of trans people have either been really in support of Blue Sky or like going over there full time, which I know several people have done that at this point.
Yep.
But like the main thing is that a lot of trans hate speech is just kind of allowed now. Like previously you would get suspended for using like any sort of like trans related slur. Like we forget, or at least I did until recently again, until it was brought to my attention that one of the entire reasons why Elon originally bought Twitter was to reinstate the Babylon Bee account because they got suspended for constantly misgendering. Who was the star in Juno? I can't remember.
Elliot Page.
Elliot Page. Yeah, they made a post about Elliot Page, I believe, and misgendered, and they got suspended, and they made like a whole stink about like we're not deleting our tweet. We're not deleting our tweet because it's free speech. And then like in the court documents for like in Discovery when Elon was buying Twitter, that like original court case, like a text of his was revealed that he was like talking to his ex-wife or something like that about how like he should buy Twitter to reinstate the Babylon Bee. So like him buying Twitter and changing everything was founded on transphobia. So
you gotta feel like a real piece of shit as Jordan Peterson, who also got removed from Twitter for also misgendering Elliot Page.
Yeah.
And Elon was like, we got to do this for the Babylon Bee.
Yeah,
Jordan Peterson's like, what the fuck?
He was brought back too, of course.
He did, yeah. And he also said he would never come back.
But I'm glad he came back because he gave us that Chinese. Oh, what was it like? Oh, what fun in Chinese or CCP. You guys remember that
dick-sucking factory?
Yeah, yeah, the real dick-sucking factory, the contraption factory that he posted about. One of the best tweets of 2023, in my opinion.
Yeah. June, I'm so glad to hear you bring this up because like a thing with me is how much I would say like tech press, even people that I respect and I like their work, just let Elon Musk get away with blatant transphobia and did not.
Yeah.
I would say like. Did not adequately report the way that transphobia and protecting transphobia under the guise of, quote, free speech is a big part of why he owns Twitter today. Like, that is a huge part of the story. And it's wild to me how little people engage with that when it was right there.
Yeah, like it was always one of the main pillars of him getting the site. And I mean, that kind of leads into the insane culture war that, at least from my perspective, has kind of somewhat died down on trans people in the last couple of weeks, thankfully. But like we saw like most of the last, like with, like Dylan Mulvaney, just people losing their minds over a 10-second Instagram video of her holding a custom beer that was only made for her. Like, I don't know, just like the rabid transphobia and I think we see like, so basically my whole point was like, there's like a huge uptick in transphobia. And just the other day, I think yesterday, there was like a Twitter post and then Elon boosted it saying like, oh yeah, we've seen a lot less hate speech. And it's like, well, that might be true when you don't consider like posting images of trans people like hanging themselves in trans people's replies as hate speech, like because you condone that sort of thing. That's what trans people see in their replies, and I've seen it a lot of these just horrific images of
the N-word trending the day after he
bought
Twitter, and it's like, well, a lot of those people, that probably wasn't hate speech. They're just sort of talking about the N-word. I don't know. Like, I'm sure he has one of those crazy 2011 white guy opinions that's like, you can't say that words are off limit, man. Like, there were so many of those motherfuckers. I mean, now it's basically all the type of guy. The only type of guy you find on Twitter is the one who wants to debate the use of the N-word with you.
And I find that very strange because like this phenomena of like, oh, you can't, like if one slur is bad, or like if all, like, I'm trying to remember exactly, like with the whole recent iDubbbz discourse about how he would say, like these slurs, the N-word he used to say, to like the whole purpose in like the 2010s from these people is like, oh, you have to, like, if we treat these words as like bad, they'll of course always be bad, so we just have to say them. Like, I thought that was like such a 2010 sort of mindset, but like I feel like that sort of mindset of like, oh, if you can't say a slur, like you not saying a slur is giving it power. Like, we're kind of seeing that again. I feel like that same discourse that we saw like a decade ago, which is crazy to me.
I just was curious, why do you think that the tech press has sort of fallen down on the job of explicating the fact that like there's a very explicit transphobic mission in this particular instance?
Oh, what a good question. I think it's that if they were to acknowledge that, they would then have to go back and acknowledge all the times that they really failed to examine Elon Musk's ideologies and like things that he says in pretty like plain English critically. I think that they did a lot of carrying water for this idea that Elon Musk is a genius, blah, blah, blah. And even when he told us who he was, I would still see things that were like, well, maybe he's just trolling. Maybe he's like the ends that people would go to really bend over backward to defend him, I think is really rooted in the fact that if they had to step back and be like, well, wait, I really allowed this person to rise to power. I really normalized a lot of what this person thinks and believes and says. I didn't really ask the critical questions. I think that's really hard to do that kind of self-realization of your role in this person's rise to power. And so I think that it's tough to then go back and be like, oh, well, let's examine the role, the very clear role that he has said that transphobia has played in his desire to own Twitter. I think it's just too much. I think it's asking too much of people who have really spent a lot of time looking the other way for whatever reason they had to do that.
Yeah, and like I think we all kind of remember that early wave when it like or Elon still was pretty recently new to owning the platform, and there was like a bunch of think pieces about like truly what does Elon Musk believe? We don't know much about his politics. And like the next day he was like boosting like race science.
The Times did two of those articles, two articles that were like what's Elon Musk's politics? It's not so clear. Because
yeah.
I guess they thought that like the fig leaf was that he voted for Biden in 2020 or that he didn't vote for Trump or something. And so they were like, well, we don't really know what his politics are. But I mean, his politics have been so, anti-union, anti-worker safety. For years and years and years. It's not been anybody's question. It's just like the new sort of social conservatism side of him has appeared in the past, I don't know, even before he bought the site. It's not like it was any mystery.
Absolutely.
But still, they were providing cover for him, which to me is baffling and infuriating. And the person who was doing that reporting, whose name escapes me at the moment, does not have a Twitter account, so I can't even yell at him about it.
Oh, that's horrible. If we can't yell at people, like, what's the point? What's the point anymore?
This is, I mean, just going off of what Bridget said about like trying to cover up their own sort of past malpractice. This is an issue with a lot of different kinds of journalists pretending as if being a billionaire is an apolitical position one is in. You have $1 billion, but that doesn't define you as a person. We have to know what's in your heart. And it's like this really sort of Protestant view of like the human mind and soul. And it's like, well, sure, Jeff Bezos may appear to be a blood-sucking maniac, but did you know he actually keeps orchids or whatever? And it's like, I don't care, actually. And this is just, I just listened to the Dollop episode about Richard Jewell, and it's like 30 years ago, but it's still just
that
the
FBI
media.
Guy?
Yeah. The bombing.
The guy who is wrongly accused of the Atlantic Olympic bombing.
Olympics. Yeah, the Atlanta Olympics bombing. Yeah, and it's like just the media immediately being like, look at this dumb fat guy. Bet he did it. He's probably gay too. And this is like, I mean, they're still doing the same thing. They've changed exactly nothing in the past 30 years. And in a lot of ways it gets worse as we have like tech journalists, podcast journalists, social media journalists who are all, their only sources are the weirdest freaks alive. And so their reporting sounds like something a weird freak would say. And then the journalist's job is to be like, this guy is actually crazy how normal this guy is. And it's just, we keep seeing it over and over again. We keep seeing this like sweeping under the rug of like what tech billionaires are, what social media actually is. And yeah, I mean, they're not asking people like us, you know, they're not asking people who actually use these products for their intended purpose.
Yeah, no, I do think we are seeing probably less of like that on faith goodwill to specifically like Elon Musk. But of course we always do see that instance of like Elon Musk is the one bad one. Like the other ones are good, but it's just Elon Musk, which is the bad one. But I do think like in specifically the case of Elon, the people that did those, what are his politics sort of think pieces have kind of abandoned that position and either are like just on his side now because they can just kind of do that. They can just kind of be the worst people they want now. Or they're like, because I saw recently, like there was a post of some dude that was like, I was rooting for Elon when he first bought the site, but like, yeah, he's bad. So like, I think people are a little bit more willing the last couple of months to admit kind of what he is and what he's doing. And I think specifically from my perspective, because I feel like a lot of the major like Twitter discourse, because of the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing for the last like year has been a lot of transphobia. So I think when he started boosting Matt Walsh's What Is a Woman documentary, like he like quote tweeted it like twice and like retweeted it and like replied to it like multiple times. Like he went hard with boosting that. And so I think that kind of was like, oh, like people can kind of tell what he is now.
Yeah, I think the mask is off. And I mean, better late than never. I'm glad that people have kind of gotten there. But imagine if we had a tech press and a media who was like pointing out what was right there all along. And, we didn't get to this place where we spent however many months being like, well, what does he really believe? I read this like crackpot idea that was like, oh, maybe it's a long con to say odious, transphobic, racist, messed up things to get more conservatives to buy electric cars to help climate change. And it's like, how much mental gymnastics do you need to do until you just acknowledge this guy is not a good guy? This is what he believes. It's not a long con. He's not playing like three-dimensional chess. He's actually not that smart. And this is who he is. You got to believe him.
Definitely. And I think like a lot of like the more well-meaning like liberals, like I know like some people in real life that were like, oh, Teslas are kind of cool. Like Elon Musk is kind of cool. And like, they're just like, and these are like not very online people. Like I'm thinking of two specific people, not very online, but like they thought Elon Musk was cool. They're like well-meaning liberals, like, Biden voters that are like, Biden's cool. But they're like, I deleted Twitter. I'm never getting a Tesla. Like, so it's like people are, they are kind of realizing, but he is going, but as to what you're saying, he is going into that conservative market because that's really all he has now. Like, because he's highly politicized himself at this point. He's destroyed the goodwill that he's created that was like not really political, but just because he was like an eccentric, or at least he had like good media coverage for years before of just being like that eccentric billionaire that's trying to save the world. But he's kind of destroyed that, which I'm kind of thankful for, that he's finally destroyed that like insane goodwill that he got from the media.
Homeboy got booed at a Dave Chappelle stand-up special. Like,
yeah.
Is there an audience more primed to be receptive to his bullshit? And they booed him.
I always forget about that. That was one of the funniest like early Elon Twitter things.
I think I think that was a setup. I think Dave set him up. I think Dave knew. Dave Chappelle's talent, what he is good at is reading a crowd, knowing how they will react to things. And he did not properly introduce Elon so that they definitely wouldn't boo Elon. I think he knew what he was doing, and he was probably feeling like, because there were ways, if you're on stage like that, there are ways to introduce people that are sort of considered more, sort of padding, sort of being like, hey guys, got a friend I want to come out here. He's a good friend of mine. But Dave in that clip is like, he's cool, he's smart, he's funny, and he's the richest man in the world. Mr. Elon Musk, come on out. And it's like, yeah, he knew what he was doing. He did not think. He kind of, I think it's a high level troll. I'm thinking 5 I said a Dave Chappelle there.
Something that you just reminded me of that I haven't thought about for months now is when people started making fun of him for that online, he responded to like a tweet about it, and it was like, well, actually, it was like more like 37% of the audience booing and the rest were just cheering and you just couldn't hear it. Like he made some like weird bullshit up.
Only 15,000 people booed at seeing me. Automatically booed my appearance.
Yeah.
So Probably good. 35% of a crowd of 40,000 didn't automatically vomit when they saw me. So I think I'm doing great.
Wow,
Yeah.
I never thought about this Dave Chappelle setup theory, but I think you might be right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I am. Yeah.
Like, I kind of believe it because, like, I don't think Dave Chappelle's a dumb dude, but he's, Dave Chappelle has been someone engaging in like that, like new modern transphobia as well, with some of his bits.
Oh yeah, I don't think
So,
he
like-
disagrees with Elon politically or anything. I just think he didn't care to help him out, and it's very funny how bad it worked out for Elon.
Yeah, I'll never get over how like the only thing he said in the microphone was "I'm rich, bitch." Like, come on.
Also, what
dude.
a hack. Like, you're a transphobe, and also the one thing you can think to come up with is saying Dave Chappelle's like biggest catchphrase. Like, you gotta be a hack on top of everything else.
Like, at least say like he could have come on stage and done like I identify as, the one joke. He could have done that, and he probably would have gotten cheers for that, but he didn't even do that.
Even if Chappelle had been like, I'm going to bring a guy out, he says he identifies as a comedian, something that he could have. There were things Dave could have done, and I think he knows he could have done them, and he chose not to.
I choose to believe that theory you have. I think that's really funny.
June, do you ever think like this is? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but like how it's like they have one joke. I see this in the Elon Twitter days. I've seen this more and more and more. From like, transphobia is abhorrent, but also the recycling of a joke from the premise of like Ace Ventura from like 1992 or whatever. It's like, get new material, y'all. Come on.
Yeah, that's kind of the funny like paradox. I don't know if paradox is the right word, but like the funny aspect of this is like some of like the like most hardened people online, especially these days, that you'll come across are trans people, because we have just been constantly shouted at and like all these horrible things. So when like someone comes into the replies with the one joke or like something like that, it's just like, I'm not even like mad. It's just like, this is sad, dude. Like,
you're gonna start replying with notes like, here's how this joke could have been better constructed.
Yeah, I've like done stuff like that before. Like, there was one time where someone just was like, "You'll never be a real woman," and I was just like, I think I said something to the effect of like, "How do you like?" I was like, "How do you feel? Like, does your personal life feel more fulfilled after saying something like that to me?" And he deleted the post. Ooh. And I checked his profile, and he posted something like, I've said a lot of hurtful things. I've done some reflecting, and I'm gonna, yeah. Like this dude, this one time, this dude was like, I'm kind of an asshole. I was like, God damn.
Yeah, I mean, I have a long history of engaging with evil people for a long period of time on the internet, DMing them, going back and forth, making friends with some of them. And you do sometimes just have to be like, hey, have you ever considered that other people might feel as much and similarly to the ways you feel in situations? And they're like, holy fucking shit. Oh my God.
They've never considered this thing called like empathy before. Like a lot of these people.
I mean, I've literally had like conversations with like schizophrenic guys who are like, I am diagnosed with schizophrenia and I'm having an episode right now. How are you tonight? And I will be like, hey man, pretty good. What's going on? And then like we end up talking and I'm like, yeah, maybe even if we do live in a simulation, maybe the simulation is set up so that if you're nice to people, it works out for you. And they're like, oh shit, yeah. What if you nice max your way into success?
Yeah, like, of course, it's not always the case, because some people are just inherently awful and contrary and will just say awful things. But a lot of the times, like, I've come to realize, like, people are just like incredibly insecure and like unhappy with their lives and themselves. So the one way they'll feel things is to say awful things to other people and try to get a reaction, because that's you get like the serotonin from like notifications, like you get the responses, you get people that you can be like, oh, I owned them. So like sometimes I'll just try to cut through that and be like, bro, are you how's your personal life, dude?
Yeah.
Like, how you feeling?
What would your grandmother say if she read what you just said?
Yeah, exactly.
Those kind of questions, I think, are really.
It doesn't always
really
work,
important.
but no. Occasionally I'll just be like, damn, would you say this to your mom? Like,
there's
I don't know.
There's a double-edged sword there, because I think certain types of people feel like it is a like an easy dunk to just be like, hey, act like a human for like the next hour and see how it feels. But it works, and it's very satisfying when it happens in real life. But I think that's why certain, I don't want to like hate, they're just like podcasts that aren't really for me, but there are certain, like, they started like 7-8 years ago, 2016, 17, podcasts that were like, I just asked a normal person what they think, and this is what I learned about them, or whatever. There's a bunch of them. The two I'm thinking of are Beautiful Anonymous with Chris Gethard, and Conversations with People Who Hate Me. And both of them, it's like nice to try to humanize these people and talk to them. And a lot of the times, like, especially on Conversations with People Who Hate Me, this was like a podcaster, actor, Twitter guy, activist, gay, Latino, who would talk to just people who had said like hateful things to him on different comments and social media and stuff. And a lot of the time they came away and they're like, oh, maybe I'm not as homophobic as I thought, or whatever, which is nice. But yeah, I think it's just not the kind of content that I always like. And I think that it's if you can get into the trenches and start like legitimately doing your best to change people's mind, there's something very gratifying, very empowering about it.
Definitely don't like my opinion on that is like, I don't spend a lot of time doing it, because like you're just going to waste your time if you try to do that for everyone. But occasionally, like, I don't know, there's just something about like certain replies where I'm like, oh, this dude is just like sad. This dude just is trying to feel something.
Yes.
That's all I was going to say, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree. I used to spend a lot of my time trying to do that work of like changing people's minds, and spent a lot of time having conversations with people who hate me, even though it wasn't a podcast that I was on. I was just doing it for fun and for free. And I guess today I just feel like I'm exhausted. We're all exhausted. If people feel like they can do some good in having those conversations, more power to them. But it's just not my ministry. And I almost feel like, I agree with you, Wack, that like, I think that as a format of a podcast, it feels very 2010s to me. And this idea that we should be spending our time like trying to change hearts and minds one bigot at a time. It's like, I have my life to live. I have stuff to do. Like, if you want to do that, that's great. But I think that's kind of like lived its usefulness. And I think the usefulness of that as a practice was like very of an era.
It feels to me a little bit like the conversations after the 2016 election, which were like, who are these Trump voters? Like, okay, you know what? I'm not interested in having that conversation.
They should have, who they should have asked when they were like, oh, here's a guy, he's a Nazi, and he's actually got kids. Isn't that interesting?
He loves to go to this cafe. Like he has a community. Damn. Never would have guessed that.
Yeah, and it's like, they should have just asked people like us. They should have asked internet cretins who have been dealing with these people for decades, and just been like, "Hey, what's the deal with all the Nazi guys who voted for Trump?" And it's like, "Oh, do not talk to those guys. Do not pay attention to those guys."
Oh God, you missed a good opportunity for a Seinfeld impression. Like, what's the deal with all these Nazis?
But no, yeah, I kind of agree with that. Where it's like with Bridget, where it's like you can't. There's literally never going to be an opportunity to rationalize someone like Elon Musk or Matt Walsh out of their positions. They're not interested in like be like rationalizing out of where they currently are, like especially with like people like Matt Walsh, where they have a grift to sell, where they're selling
they aren't
a brand.
Being rational, so answering what they're doing by being rational, like they like the whole what is a woman thing, like the entire conceit of like what is a woman, asking somebody, hey, what is a woman, that to me reads exactly in the same way that like, dudes when we were in like fourth grade that would be like, "Hey, spell I cup," and it's like, "Oh, why do you want me to spell that?" And it's like, "Just spell it. Just spell it, and I'll tell you why." And it's like somebody's like, "Oh, what is a woman?" And you're like, "Oh, why do you ask that?" And they're like, "You can't answer. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what a woman is." And it's like, no, it's just a weird question. It's just a weird. It sounds like you have other goals when you ask that question.
Yeah, it's like, this feels like it's leading somewhere, almost like it's a leading question or something.
If you ask something really obvious, if I was just like, "Okay, Bridget, describe the color red," you would not be like, it's on the high end of the visual spectrum. You would be like, what?
This reminds me of my like favorite TikTok where they're at a protest or something and some provocateur goes up to somebody and says, how many genders are there? And he just says, "I just got here."
I don't know. I just got here.
I love that response.
That reminds me of one of the like actually really funny things that Biden once said. Like he was asked that same question, like, "How many genders are there?" And he was like, "At least 3." And it's like, damn, that's kind of like hilarious. That kind of rocks.
There's definitely 3.
At least 3.
I can say there's definitely 3. As far as I would like to see Biden go the other way with that, and then start like keeping a checklist of what are the real neopronouns, what are the accepted neopronouns, and what are not.
Yeah, it's going to be like the debate stage. It's going to be him and Ron DeSantis, and there's going to be a gender debate, and he's going to be like, he's going to start describing all the what do you call it? The xenopronouns. Is that what they're called? I forget sometimes.
Neopronouns.
The neopronouns. Yeah, he's going to just start listing them off, and Ron DeSantis is going to get pissed the fuck off.
It's Z and Zer, Jack. It's G Jim.
Back in my day, we respected the Z Jims. These days, Ron DeSantis can't stop hating on them. I don't know. I don't have a good Biden impression.
I don't think we're gonna have a good Biden, but it is like a. Yeah. I would like to see him like specifically say, "It is not a pronoun for a human, Jack. You can't identify as it's. That's not fair." So, Bridget, I would also like to ask you, I don't know if your DMs are open, or what is your sort of engagement, interaction, etc. Looking like on Twitter?
These days or in general? These days it's minimal. I mean, I just can't. It's just like not something that I can justify voluntarily spending my time at, and it's like all of us, I'm definitely too online, and so I'm trying to like kind of wean myself off the muscle memory of just going to Twitter absentmindedly. And it definitely has left a hole in my, digital diet. But, I'm logging on there. I get so enraged at the stupidity of the replies that I am seeing that eventually it's like comes to a point where it's not good for me. So I'm spending less and less time there. I told myself that if I'm not going to tweet about anything important, it's going to be only like shit posts and housewives and bad food opinions, and I will get my little engagement needs met that way. But yeah, it's no longer a platform where I'm bringing any of my real self.
You're really smart for that. That's probably very healthy for your mindset to do that to yourself.
Well, otherwise it's just me scrolling and like screaming, like, "Did you see what this guy posted?" Like I just get so angry.
Exactly.
And it's totally out of self-preservation.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of that, the quote tweet dunks and stuff. And every time, this is the thing, this is what I have seen as being like to me, I kind of knew as soon as Elon bought it that the Nazis and stuff would definitely be around. But to me, the most annoying thing is that like a lot of normal people have just left, just aren't using it, just aren't really engaging with it, like you, Bridget. And the difficult thing is that the people who are left now are just so like even left-wing people, even normal people, are just the most like cantankerous, annoying pedants. And they like yesterday I had a long back and forth. Past couple days actually, I've had long back and forths with the Irish for my crimes
Irish?
against the Irish.
The Irish community. The Irish community.
The Irish, the
You're not
Irish
where I
are
expected
not
that
happy
sentence
with
to
me. Yeah, the Irish are not happy with me, but I still.
What did you say or do to get their?
I'll tell you
ire?
the system of events there. Number one, I tweeted the joke. I am going to name my kid Siobhan with the Irish spelling, and I will insist that everybody pronounce it as it's spelled. So it'd be like Siobhan or Siobhan. And
is that how you? Wait, how do you actually say that? Because I've seen that name
it's
before. Is
Siobhan.
it how you said it?
Yeah,
Siobhan.
it's Siobhan.
Okay.
And I am like, I got like one reply of somebody being like, I was actually beat with sticks for speaking Gaelic in my school, so I don't actually find this joke very funny. And I was like, okay, I wasn't at your school. I didn't do that.
Yeah, you didn't beat this dude with sticks.
And yeah, but I'm not going to sit there and like apologize to the Irish community for erasing their language, because people were like, yeah, the British have been trying to erase Irish and Scottish native languages for decades and truly millennia, and you are disrespect. And I'm like, hey man, I was making a joke about the name Siobhan, and I'm not like a linguistics expert or anything. I don't know. And also, like, I'm American, and this is what I tried to explain to the guy. I'm like, hey, I know that happens in other countries. That has not happened in America in my lifetime. Kids don't get in trouble for speaking another language at school. I understand that is a part of America's history. That is not a part of my lived experience, or anybody who's my age or knows or who has been to school in the last 30 or so years. So it's just not something I would ever think about. And he's like, well, now it's time for you to delete the tweet and apologize. And I was like, no, no, it is not.
Scold. You
I know.
really like hit on something that this is my big spiel, is that with so many people like normies leaving the platform or showing up less on the platform, the temperature has got turned up for everybody. So right, left, even people who don't necessarily like bring a political agenda to how they tweet. And so the platform, used to have its problems, of course, but it was fun. You could make jokes, you could tease, you could like get a little joke in. And it just feels like now it is crazies, extremists, and scolds. And who wants to spend their voluntary off time hanging out with crazies, extremists, and scolds?
Yeah, they're like pissed off because like, and this is why I didn't really engage seriously with it, and I kept making jokes about the Irish. I said that a modest proposal was spittin'. I said that
I did see that post. I wasn't sure where that came from.
Yeah, I said that I was. I explained that I am mixed race. I'm half Irish, half human.
Jesus Christ.
So you were just leaning into it.
Yeah. Well, my real name is Irish. My white side of my family is all Irish. And I thought it was funny. And I've made so many jokes about Italians. They never got their panties in such a twist as the Irish did over one little thing. But yeah, it's like, it's so like, you're, like, there are people who think that Irish isn't a real language and they shouldn't be allowed to speak it. Those people actually exist. They are in the government in Britain, but the people are like on Twitter. They're like, I bet it's this guy. I bet the guy with the cartoon profile picture is the one beating children with sticks.
Yeah. So I wanted to actually go back because I think, Bridget, you kind of hit on something that is like kind of a symptom of, and maybe this is just kind of like, because of where I really started to pay attention like really intensely to online discourse. So maybe it's been like this longer, but like I feel like it's been more of like a Trump era, like 2015, sort of 2016 spawned phenomena where like everyone is just on edge a lot more. Like everyone is just like, like people are angry more. People are just more willing to get into like spats with each other. Like, I don't know, like today, there was on, I don't know if you guys are on Blue Sky very often. I think me and Caleb are really the only ones.
I get
in
on
here
there.
that-
You know, I try to use
Occasionally.
it. I'm still on
Yeah,
Twitter.
so-
I'm still doing Twitter.
I mostly do Twitter, but okay, I'll do like Blue Sky as well. But like today, there was a really intense Blue Sky discourse about how like about Drill, like the you know, like Drill went the Twitter poster, one of the most, I guess, well-known Twitter posters. And like you'd think like it wouldn't be that intense for especially a platform that only has 300,000 people and like is mostly left-wingers, but like I don't know, like it's really a shame that people like, and we're all victims of it and we all perpetuate it. And I'm not excluding myself, of course, that we're just all on edge and we just cannot wait to like get mad at someone. And I don't know, I feel like it wasn't as much like that pre 2015. And I don't really know why. Like, I don't know what spawned that.
Oh, I completely
I feel like
agree.
people are just more confrontational these days.
I think it was Trump. A lot of people that I've talked to for the podcast and like who researched this have really said that something about Donald Trump just turned the temperature up on everything. And that was I mean, as awful as Trump was for so many reasons, everybody got so shitty on Twitter. Like people who like used to be making jokes would be like, I have something important to say. Tweet one of question mark. And like, oh, goddamn, a long ass thread. Like, really? People would do the like siren, like all caps. Like everything just got so intense. And I honestly think from the last like 10 years that we've had, people are exhausted, on edge, fed up, rightfully so. But I think that we don't have the idea of lashing out at like institutional forces seems too big and too lofty. So we get on Twitter and scream at each other, right? And it's like, that's all we have. It just feels like an empty response to the institutional or systemic forces that we wish we could rage at, but we can't. So it's like, I'm going to scream at this woman who tweeted about having coffee in her garden, or whatever.
Oh, God, I remember that
was
one,
unhinged.
Yeah.
That was really not normal.
Like people have lost it.
But yeah, that's so true. Yeah, like I think you're so right about like because everything feels hopeless. Like, I mean, I don't think it is hopeless, but it sometimes can feel like it is. Like, especially for people on the left, and I don't know, maybe in other political ideologies, but of course we're on the left. But like when Bernie Sanders first lost, like I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016 and in 2020, like in both times, especially like after he lost, it was like, oh, goddamn, maybe maybe the centrists are right. Maybe nothing truly can get better, sort of thing. So it's like we turn on each other. We start to do the not to give validity to exactly what he said, but like I think it was one of Barack Obama's like advisors would talk a lot about like the circle firing squad. I forget who that was, but like we kind of like there's kind of some truth to that where like we kind of do a circular firing squad, like because we have no like what else can we do? Like we can't like force Biden to like forgive student debt. Like how are we going to do that? We can be mad at like the coffee garden person because it's easy. She's right there. We can just quote tweet her.
Well, I mean, you're spot on, but it's also like really the third option would be to be regular, is to not.
Yeah, I guess being online like this isn't very regular because like, of course there's stuff you can do in real life and people should be doing that. People should be doing activism in real life and going to like, I don't know, people have a lot of complaints about DSA, but DSA does do a lot of pretty good things in local regions. So like there is stuff you can do, but like in terms of online, in the online space and era, it's like people would used to say like, oh, posting is praxis. And it's like, I kind of don't believe that as much anymore. Like, I don't really I think posting can be influential, but I don't think that's the end all be all. I think you have to
the praxis benefit of posting is that you can like get used to talking to people who don't agree with you on every single thing because you might be in a friend group in real life where just you guys all basically think the same way. I think that's much more common in the real life space than it is online, just because of where people live, where they work, and you just tend to interact with people who think the same as you. I think posting is really good to hear what other people say, but it is not a good place to be productive, get anything done, talk about anything useful.
What I will say, though, is posting is actually pretty decent for community building. I've met a handful of people and helped organize like real life stuff just through Twitter. So like it is a useful tool. It is a very useful tool for especially leftists. But I think treating it as like the end all be all of like praxis, like you have to go beyond just posting, you know?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you know, we talk so much about social media on here. We're not telling you to stop using it. But I also think...
I know, I never will.
I also think that... I think now is a good time for people to reflect on what brought you to social media. For at some point in your life, if you're over, say, 25, at some point in your life, you made the decision to join a social media site. You were against it for some reason, and then you chose to join it. Think back to why you joined it. And I think that's a really good just mental practice. For me, I joined Twitter to find other people making fun of conservatives. That was my whole reason. And since then, I have made a lot of friends and started a podcast and met people in the real life, and it's been very rewarding. So I did not join it to get called slurs, to engage in bad faith arguments, to give schizophrenic weirdos the time of day. So those are the things that you have to sort of like take a second, have somebody in your life like I have. I have my wife who is not online at all. And
what a beautiful thing. I'm so happy for her.
Yeah. So I told her this whole thing. I told her this whole story about the Irish thing. And she was like, number one, you brought this on yourself. Number two, I think some of those Irish guys have a point.
You just got roasted, dude.
And I was like,
roasted.
Yeah, so I called my dad today and I told him the same thing. And he was like, well, that's interesting, huh? Because those cultures have really suffered a lot, especially like because of British colonialism. I was like, don't you start too.
So your whole family was like, you're wrong and they're right.
Yeah.
You need to apologize.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that though. But I will. Yeah, it's you need people like that. I'm not going to delete the tweets or apologize or anything, but I will say that like I can absorb the perspective from my loved ones that maybe not everybody is going to see it the way I saw it. You know, maybe some people will not be so happy to hear that. My wife is also Italian in heritage, and so she felt like this was my comeuppance for denigrating her people as often as I have.
Yeah, no, I think having an offline, like being offline is pretty healthy. Like knowing people that aren't as online as we are. Like I think Bridget, you being mostly offline now probably has done wonders for your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still online a little, but I've definitely made very intentional steps to be offline more. It's been good. My partner is pretty offline. I think that one thing, kind of like what you were saying, I would explain, like, do you know when you're explaining like a piece of drama that happened on Twitter to somebody who is not on Twitter, and you have to start in such a weird place to even like catch them up, and you can tell while you're explaining that they're like, "Are you okay?"
Absolutely, yeah. There'll be times where I'll like try to because my girlfriend is also mostly offline, especially off of Twitter. So it's like whenever, like, if I'm explaining it to her or like other people in my life that are more offline, I'm like, I start laughing at myself because it's like, what the fuck am I talking about here? Like, this is like insane.
Yeah. So I have less of that, and it's brought us, I think, closer, and it just helps me be more present.
Yeah, I think, you know, being present and also being able to, like, not alienate, like, that's part of being present, right? Is you're not alienating people with, like, hey man, I know everybody's talking about Barbenheimer, but what else you got going on? And they're like, I'm sorry, what did you? And it's like it's a thing where you do have to step back a lot of the time. I mean, we all the common joke around the Bean Dad got milkshake duct stuff. It's like the same thing.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, the classic Bean Dad.
Yeah. It was. That was like a good point of self-reflection. My view on social media in general is that there are like good things that happen on there, like generally positive things. And so like
Absolutely.
the Bean Dad got milkshake duct thing, I think was a really important moment for people online where they were like, we have turned Twitter into a sort of gate-kept club that only the weirdest people are allowed to be successful on. And we should, by rights, acknowledge that to at least each other, if no one else. And I think that with Elon owning the platform now, I think there are normal people starting to get into it. And my gauge is always, for this kind of stuff, is always my mother, who is like a big MSNBC, CNN type of lib. And she, like, a year ago was like, isn't it so, maybe not a year, maybe 2 years ago, she was like, isn't it so cool that SpaceX got this new agreement with NASA? It's a public-private partnership. Isn't that so interesting? And I was like, no, it's not interesting. That guy's a monster. And she was like,
and look at where we're at now.
yeah, and now she's like, Elon, he's a Nazi, he's a pedophile, he's not good, right? He's bad. And I'm like, yeah, he's bad. And she's like, okay. And I think it's there has been a big shift. He has definitely lost the mandate of heaven from the mainstream media, which is so funny because 5 years ago he had it from everybody. He had it from me. I would see him in interviews. He's like, yeah, we're going to build these things. It's going to be cool. And then the interviewer was like, how soon? And he's like, well, sooner than you might think. And I'm like, cool guy, whatever. I don't know. And then he was like, hey, what do you think about trans people? And he was like, I think that we must preserve the future for our white children.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I think about that often, about how he had so much goodwill from the media. Like, everyone loved this dude, but he's destroyed it so effortlessly. It's kind of fascinating.
He should have stuck to just the cars and the spaceships, I think.
Yeah, he didn't have to become buddy with Cat Turd 2. He really didn't have to do it. Although they're not buddies anymore. They're not friends anymore.
No, friendship with Cat Turd 2 has ended. So the last big thing I really want to say about the state of social media, I think, is that as people start to exit from Twitter, and I think when these things have happened, if you were, I know you all were, and I was, but if any of our listeners were a part of the sort of social media wars following the up and coming success of Twitter and Twitter's IPO and then Snapchat's IPO, just the deluge of social media sites. I mean, we've all at various points on this show made predictions about what we think is going to be successful or what we think is going to work. But I think the thing that the users should keep in mind, the thing that all of us should remember is you can't change the world by posting. You simply cannot. And so try to find a reason to use it that isn't some sort of higher goal, because if you have higher political goals or social goals, you should talk about those with real people, not guys with cartoon avatars who infuriate the Irish on purpose. You should talk to them. You should talk about it with people in your community. And so, I really want the people who already know this piece of information to internalize it, that you can have a greater degree of control over the people who live next door to you than you do with your Twitter mutuals, because the people who live next door to you have a lot more in common with you than your Twitter mutuals that you don't actually know anything about. Like, if you're my mutual, you probably don't know my name or what I look like or where I live. So those are like things that matter. And I don't know what you guys think. I'll ask you guys what you think. But like, what do you think should be the outcome of this shakeup in the social media platforms? Bridget.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I have to tell you, when you said that we should think back to when we first got on social media, the very first social media platform I ever got on was MySpace. And I got on it because I saw my college roommate on MySpace, and one of her friends was Tila Tequila. And I thought Tila Tequila was really pretty and cool. So I was like, I got to start a MySpace so I can talk to Tila Tequila.
I forgot about her.
Yeah. We all know, I mean, it had a weird, it got weird with her. But yeah, I think to your point about where this kind of moment in tech takes us, similarly, I think that we should think about when folks think about like what a fulfilled and meaningful life looks like, really think about what that is for you, right? And so I think that for most people, it is more IRL time with your community, your friends, family, more experiences out in the world. And then realize that the people who have been kind of tasked with designing our tech futures, that's probably not what their version of a happy, fulfilled, meaningful life looks like. And so I would say, similarly to what you just said, Wack, like really think about the kind of future that we want for our lives and the kind of future that folks like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos want for our lives. And if those don't seem aligned, really think about why that might be, the ways in which they're not aligned, and how you might intentionally make sure that you're, really putting your energy into creating what you think your life should be like to have it be fulfilled and meaningful. Because I'll tell you, when you listen to some of these guys on tech podcasts, like Elon Musk on tech podcasts, talking about what he thinks a good life looks like for the future, I can guarantee you what he thinks is a good life and what you think is a good life are two different things. And so you really got to ask, do you want this person, driving you to what that future looks like? I would argue no.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's a great point. June, what do you think? Where do you think this leads to us going?
So again, going back to here, like the first thing that brought you to social media, like my presence mostly on social media now is like, I do like some political, like I do a lot of my presence is political, but like I mostly do jokes now. But when I first got on social media, like Twitter specifically, I would post like, I was posting during the 2020 primary, like the Democratic primary. So it was like much more focused on like real life type of, like elections, hoping for, pushing the country to the left. So I would say like there's so much labor action going on right now with like, we talked to Iffy, I think maybe 2 months ago when the writer's strike started, about like the type of negotiations they're asking from in Hollywood, and now the actor strike is going on. Like it just started. What was that, like a week ago? And there's so much really good labor strikes going on right now. And then the UPS, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's probably going to start in 2 weeks from this point. Like I feel like in this point in history, labor for the left has never been stronger. There's never been a better time to get involved with labor action, labor strikes. So I would recommend if you got on social media to advocate for a further left or like a better future for workers and minorities of any group, like especially with the labor action going on right now, because as we all know, a lot of, especially like groups like the UPS, a lot of these laborers are not like upper middle class type folk. It's a lot of Black people, it's a lot of Latino people, it's a lot of trans people involved in these groups. So labor action has never been better in this country right now. There's so much opportunity to strike or to support laborers. Like there's still the railway strike going on, I believe, or I don't know if it's a strike, but the railway action.
I mean,
there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's still
labor.
conversations around the rail stuff. It didn't go away because Biden stopped the strike for Christmas time.
Right, that's true.
And
But it's never, basically my point is it's never been better for like left-wing labor action in the country. Like there's so much happening right now.
Yeah, I definitely want to wrap up here, but I also just wanted to, you made me think of something, June. I've been helping my brother move the past couple days, and he and I have been spending a lot of time in a truck. And we were talking, he told me he saw this like series of YouTube videos that he found really interesting about like how cultures function when counterculture doesn't exist. And it was this whole like unified theory about the United States in 2023 about like how we have silenced a counterculture and therefore ruined the progression that our culture can do. And I actually don't agree with that at all. And I think that there is definitely a counterculture that exists, and it is being held by the working class. It is being held by racial, gender, sexual minorities. It is being maintained by communities of people who work in restaurants, warehouses, and things like that. And just because it isn't, there's no MTV that's going around talking to warehouse guys about like why they're a felon, doesn't mean that those people aren't like countercultural. And so many, just because I've worked in so many restaurants, a lot of my family has worked in so many like workshops and warehouses and stuff. Like this is very much the world I've lived in, and I want people to feel like our own interactions, our own lives can be lived in a way that changes things and that improves the world for ourselves and others, but that isn't done online. That doesn't happen on the same place where Cat Turd 2 complains about how he didn't get $30,000.
Yeah, but I will clarify that social media is a great place to start like meeting people that you can maybe actually trust in real life. Like I've made so many friends from social media, like Twitter specifically. So like it is a useful tool, but don't put all your stakes into it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so Bridget, what would you like to plug? What do you want the people to know about?
Ooh, well, first of all, this was so fun, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Folks can listen to my podcast on iHeartRadio. There are No Girls on the Internet, where we're exploring the internet, social media, and technology through the perspective of folks who are usually left out of those conversations. It's been interesting doing the show without being on Twitter as much, but it still gets done. So we would love to have you there. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks for coming on. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came. It's a great show. I hope you guys do listen to it. I've listened. I haven't listened to the new season yet, but I'm a huge fan. I think what you guys are doing is really important. And
Oh my
good stuff over there.
gosh. Thank you so much. I'm so flattered.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm going to flatter you a lot more once the recording stops, but I don't want to embarrass myself. So thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.